Hey everyone! So it's been a while since I posted a book review, but I just had so many thoughts about this one, so I thought, why not? I'll post one. The book I want to talk about today is Just Between Us. I Hate Everyone But You by Gabby Dunn and Allison Raskin of Just Between Us. This best-selling book is about Ava and Jen, two best friends who are being separated for the first time by college. Ava opts to stay close to home in California to pursue directing, while Jen goes all the way across the country to Boston to go to journalism school. They go through the ups and downs of their first semester of college and keep in touch via email and text. Like I said, I had so many thoughts about this book, many of them good, so let's get the bad out of the way. My primary concern with this novel is that it feels like a fanfic / wish fulfillment of Gabby Dunn and Allison Raskin's lives. This book is literally if you took Gabby and Allison, made them teenagers again, and made them best friends since high school. Gabby literally went to college at Emerson, and Jen, aka Genevieve, the character that starts with a G, went to college at Emerson. Allison, in real life, is a director, and you guessed it, Ava, the one starting with an A, wants to be a director. I don't really know why this bothered me so much, because I am a massive fan of Gabby Dunn and Allison Raskin as human beings, and together when they are just between us, and they have a fabulous YouTube show where they used to give advice, but now they just talk about their life, and it's just really good stuff, and you can tell that they put a lot of their heart and soul into this book. I think it's just a matter of me being too attached to Gabby and Allison, and it was very hard for me to separate Gabby and Allison from Ava and Jen, and because Ava and Jen are so closely linked to the writers, and they're so similar, it was really hard for me to separate it, and I really like separation between author and characters. I like that John Green now writes girls primarily, and writes completely different characters from himself. I really love the fact that he writes mysteries when obviously he probably hasn't ever searched for a dead parent's body, and I'm going to Turtles all the way down. I should stop that. I really like when I can separate the plot and the characters from the author, especially if I really feel like I know the author well outside of being an author, like I do with Gabby and Allison, and like I do with John Green, for example, and other YouTubers who are writers, because we get their lives in real time, in real life, all of the time. I think for me it felt almost lazy that they didn't go any extra steps to separate the characters, or make the characters any different from them, and make the characters have any sort of different perspectives. I almost wish that Ava was the one who ended up being queer, and Jen ended up being the one who had a mental illness, even though she had characteristics of Gabby more. You know, I just wish they had at least mixed it up a little bit, mixed up some of the characteristics, made it different enough that it didn't feel like a fanfic of their lives. It was just one of those things where I saw it immediately, and then I kept seeing it throughout, and I wanted there to be differences, but it didn't feel like there were enough. But there is a lot to be said for having a very strong voice and point of view, and I will get to that. Like I said, I did love this book. Another thing I didn't really like as much, and this is coming from the bookseller side of me, is that this book is very much sex, drugs, and rock and roll. It's very hard to sell a book when you know that it's going to discuss sleeping with a teacher's aide and polyamory and severe mental illnesses. It's just not an easy sell to parents, and you have to trust that the teen is going to want this book without kind of pushing it on them, because I can't be like, this book is full of sex, drugs, and rock and roll. Here you go. Buy this book. It's just a lot harder to sell that versus even The Hate U Give, which is a lot tamer on those topics, even though it's about really heavy stuff. It's a lot easier for me to sell The Hate U Give because even though both are about very important issues, one is it's very obvious in The Hate U Give what it's about and why it's about that, while in I Hate Everyone But You, it's not as obvious why it's about these things unless you follow the writers' lives. This felt like it was very much for fans of Just Between Us and fans of Gabby Dunn and Allison Raskin, and even though I'm a fan of them, it didn't feel original enough because I follow them so closely, you know? That said, anyone who's looking for own voices works for queer novels or novels about mental illness, I highly recommend it. It is fantastic in terms of representation. Finally, the third thing that I didn't like as much about this novel, and this is just a nitpick, this is something that was just a pet peeve of mine, is that even though the epistolary nature of this novel really works, there weren't time and date stamps in the emails and text messages that we see. So it was very hard to tell whether they were sending these emails in October at the beginning of the semester or in December at the end of the semester, even though obviously it follows an order and we do get some sense of time, but like in an epistolary novel, I like having the dates. I like knowing that on November 4th they sent this, and then, on November 6th they emailed back, so it was two days later, and over the span of 2 days we don't know what happened, or we'll find out what happened and fill in the gaps between those 2 days. I feel like with the epistolary novel, it's very easy to establish time as a setting, and they didn't do that. I don't know if that was an editorial choice, I don't know if it was the choice of the writers, but it just kind of bugged me that I didn't know where in the semester they were. I actually didn't even realize it was supposed to be over the span of just one semester, and not two, until very late in the novel. So, just one of those things that kind of bugged me. And now for the good parts. Remember, I did like this novel. Okay, so like I said before, amazing queer representation and representation of mental illnesses. The good thing about it being by Gabby Dunn and Allison Raskin is that you know that they know exactly what these characters are experiencing. And you know that Gabby Dunn is bisexual. You know that she is polyamorous. And you know that she's experienced what the characters experienced in the novel. You know that Allison has struggled with severe OCD her entire life. You know that she has anxiety. You know that we know that these people have experienced the things that are in this book. The emotions are real. The feelings are real. The things that happened feel real. A lot of the times we see depictions of illness or depictions of being queer that are so removed from what it actually feels like in media that it was so refreshing to see that. It was so refreshing to see someone go through their bisexual awakening and be unsure of themselves, but try to act confident about it because everyone expected her to be confident about it. And it was very cool to see someone trying to fit into the stereotypical pretty girl act when she really felt out of place and trying to figure out where her place was in college while struggling with a mental illness. It was very cool to see that. And as someone who has both struggled with being queer and mental illness in college, it was amazing to see that because I have never seen that before in all of the books I've read. Another thing that I really loved were very strong characters and very strong voices. This is probably because they sounded like the writers themselves, but the voices were fantastic. You knew who was who. You knew how they felt at all times. You knew what their motivations were for doing certain things and making certain decisions that felt wrong to one person but felt right to another. You just knew everything that they were feeling, and I think that's a lot owed to the epistolary nature of this novel and the fact that they're reenacting things for the other person instead of seeing the dialogue in action in real time. I think it really worked for this novel, especially because in the novel, both girls want to be storytellers of some kind. Ava wants to be director, Jen wants to be a journalist. They both want to tell stories, so it was really cool to see them telling stories back and forth to each other while learning how to tell stories in a professional capacity. Finally, the thing that was by far my favorite thing about the whole book is the healthy relationship between Ava and Jen. Sometimes it's hard to remember that friendships are relationships that need to be maintained and kept healthy. This story has real conflict between the two main characters, even though they love each other, and even though they try to support each other in whatever the other does. They keep each other really accountable when they disagree with each other, and they are just so real about their pain and their love for each other, and you see with the way the big conflict near the end gets resolved that their friendship has lasted and will last because they know how to fight with each other and for each other. They know that their friendship will last, and they know that they have to work to make their friendship last, and they are willing to put in that work. And it's fantastic to see that about friendship, because we see that represented in relationships a lot. It's hard to see that represented with friendship. So, who would I recommend this book for? I would recommend this book for people who are 15 or older, definitely. It's not for younger teens. It's not for young people, just because of the content and the decisions they make. Even though these two characters are pretty mature for their age, they're still so clearly maturing and so clearly figuring their shit out. And there is language in it. There is a lot of talk of sexual things that happen, including the loss of one's virginity, including sleeping with a TA, including a lot of things. And obviously, it's not because of the queer themes, and it's not because of the mental illness that I wouldn't recommend it for younger kids. It's because of kind of the choices they make, and the things that go on, that I wouldn't recommend it for younger teens. I would also recommend it if you really like epistolary novels. I'm not the biggest fan of epistolary novels, so it took me a little while to warm up to the format, but I did end up really liking it, and it really worked in this book. One book that constantly kept coming back to mind was P.S. Longer Letter Later. If you guys remember that book at all, it was between two friends who had been separated for the first time, and they were writing letters back and forth to each other, and then in the sequel, Snail Mail No More, they were writing emails back and forth to each other. So this had that kind of feel where it was definitely a long-distance friendship, and they were trying to keep in touch while their lives were diverging so much. That, but 10 times more mature. That's kind of who I would recommend it to. You kind of know how I feel about this book. And I don't have the book on hand, unfortunately, but obviously you know what it looks like. But I do like to always include a favorite quote of mine that really stood out in the book whenever I review a book. And this one, this is Jen emailing Ava, and this is her talking about her hero, Edward Snowden. And she has also recently talked about how she got with a girl and things like that. And so the quotation is, "Sexuality is like a river, and sometimes it bends right into America's greatest hero." It's so funny. It's just so Gabby Dunn, because it's about journalism, it's about sexuality and how it can be fluid, and it's just such a great metaphor, and I love it. So yeah, that is it for this video. I hope you guys enjoyed this book review, and I really hope to do more. Let me know if you want to see more book reviews, because I am reading a lot right now, and I have so many thoughts about so many books. But yeah, that is it for this video. Let me know if you enjoyed it. Let me know if you've read this book, and I would love to hear your thoughts, and were my criticisms of it too nitpicky and too niche, or were they valid? I'm not sure. Let me know in the comments down below. Yep, that is it. I will see you guys next time. Bye! Extra special shout out to Jay Patel, aka Pellinex, for supporting me on Patreon. Thank you so much for your support.